Good evening. My name is Tawana Collins Booth, and welcome to Blue Table Talk. And I have my favorite sidekick here with me today, Mr. Arnell Brady, speech language pathologist. And today we're going to be talking about hypersensitivity. And hypersensitive to sight, touch, sound, smell, or taste. So, Mr. Brady, can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Working as a speech language pathologist, we have to take into consideration the whole person. And the IEP, the individual educational program, is most appropriate for a discussion of this nature because we have to really consider individual physical differences in each person. Each person has their own set of fingerprints, their own voice, their own brain, their own way of processing information. And that has really became true in the speech and language clinic, in working with people on the autism spectrum, because we have to really consider them as an individual, as a whole person. And we have to create an environment that will help them to learn, to be able to develop and use oral language. And in so doing, we have to be very considerate of light.
Yeah.
We have to be very considerate of sound, very considerate of touch and of smell and of taste, if there's any foods or edibles being involved. And sometimes there are edibles being involved in speech language pathology treatment.
Okay.
We've had many cases where we have seen people on the autism spectrum be hypersensitive to certain types of lights. And like we have in this room, the iridescent lights, we've had to cut those off in some cases and put on lamps because the person was hypersensitive to that type of light.
Okay.
And would shade their eyes when they came into the room. That immediately told us that we had to adjust that room lighting for that individual. It's the same thing with sound. It really hit home for me when I had a little boy. He was about 4 years old on the autism spectrum. And I turned the computer on. And if you're familiar with the Windows computer, they used to have a cascading type of sound.
I remember that.
And when that came on for the first time, he jumped up and ran out of the room. I immediately knew that it was that sound coming at him, and it frightened him. It alerted him. As a matter of fact, that's what all of our senses do. Our sense of taste, our sense of smell, our sense of touch. I've had many individuals on the spectrum. You got to be very careful in how you touch. You have to pay attention to their response to touch. Some like to be touched. Some do not like to be touched. And
no, they don't.
If you want to create an environment where they can learn, you got to watch your touch.
Yes, you have to.
You have to watch your touch. But that little boy, in the cascading sound of that Windows opening, I immediately knew, I'm going to have to pay a lot more attention to what sounds I want to introduce.
Sensitive to his ears.
It's sensitive to his ears. All of our senses, our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, our sense of smell, our sense of touch, our sense of taste, the first physical response that we have is an alerting response.
Okay.
It alerts us to something in the environment. And with that information, we begin to organize a response. Well, we know in the case of autism that in the brain there are a deficit in long interhemispheric connections. But the alerting response is very close to our sense of processing the world perceptually. It's very close. So if we hear a sound, we try to turn towards its direction. If we smell something, we begin to search for.
Oh, I smell that.
Yeah. Well, there was nothing like my grandmama's rose, boy. To this day, I can still smell a rose cooking in the kitchen on Sunday. But the same thing with touch. It alerts us to watch out. The sound alerts us to watch out. Visual things, we see something moving. It alerts us to watch out. And we have to organize a response to it. But in some individuals who do not have those long connections to where they can begin to make judgments about what is going on, then they're going to go into either a fight or flight kind of response. They're either going to get out of there or they're going to run. And with some of the kids, I've noticed that certain lights, they don't want to go in that room. They don't want to go in that room, and
it's hurting their eyes.
It's hurting their eyes. It's too much. And even with the sound, we notice that sometimes the sound can be too loud. And we oftentimes say, well, the sound is not really too loud for us. Why is it too loud for them? Well, in some cases, in our auditory mechanism, in our hearing mechanism, we have a reflex that if a sound is too loud, the reflex will start to stop the motion of the middle ear from generating that sound on. It'll try to slow it down. But what in cases where that doesn't work?
Right.
That sound then keeps going. And so the individual can become frightened.
Yeah.
So we have to really, and I think that any individual educational program developed for a person with autism should take into consideration their responses in response to perceptual stimulation, sensory stimulation, and the integration of those senses. We've seen a lot of programs that now have begun to work on sensory integration types of things. And that is, I really want to talk about also the sensory friendly event.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard about it?
I haven't heard about that.
The sensory friendly event occurs in our community at the Chatham Theater.
Okay.
On 87th, right off of State. That a movie theater every Saturday at noon.
Okay.
They project sensory friendly movies.
But I think I have heard of this.
Yeah, they have it at a number of.
Because when you said sensory friendly, you didn't say the movie theater.
Okay.
So that's why I was like, no, I ain't heard of that. But yeah, I heard of that at the movie theater, and that's great too.
Yes. And what do? They cut down the sound. They modulate the lighting in a sense. They adjust the lighting. They slow some things down on the projection thing, because sometimes them flickering, those frames are moving.
And then by the screen being so big, it's coming at you, and so
so they really I think that is something that we should be taken advantage of. You know, there's a great benefit because I think this Saturday at 12 o'clock at the Chatham, they're showing The Lion King.
What?
Yes. And of course, it is free.
Okay, now did y'all hear that out there? This Saturday at the 87th and Chatham Theater, they're going to be having sensory screening for The Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
At what time you said again?
12 o'clock. 12 o'clock.
12
and
noon.
It is free.
And it's free. So
it's free for the children. And I think they just asked for the caregiver, there's a $5. It's not the regular show price.
Okay.
I think it's a $5 donation or fee that is given. But I think that is really nice to where now they are coming out in the community and adjusting the sensory levels so that more people can tolerate them.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really
and
good.
that's great because I remember when I used to couldn't take George to the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people see George now and they say, "Oh, okay, George, he doing so well." But when George was 4, 5, 6, when he in the beginning, when he was younger, I couldn't take George to the show because of the movie theater, because of the
so
loud screen. My alarm, I couldn't turn my alarm on. We have to make sure we turn the alarm off and hold him back from coming in, because if he heard the alarm, he would put his hands on his ear and he would think it was danger. Fire trucks, it would hurt his ears. So I dealt with sensory issues too with George and for a minute, but again, speech.
It's wonderful that more and more people, more and more venues, more and more locations and places, events are becoming sensory friendly. We need more of those type places in our schools because we know that sometimes there's that sensory overload and the child becomes somewhat disorganized. And if we use things like swings and smells and lights, we can calm them and they can regain, control, regain organization. I haven't seen many in the schools. I know there was one that was really publicized to where a lady spent her own money. One of the teachers spent her own money and made a sensory room in the school that provided a great benefit to the students. And I know at Mount Carmel, they have, a lot of people don't even know that Mount Carmel has special needs, diverse learners there, but they do. And they have a sensory room to where students can go when they have sensory overload. Because I think that is something we might all experience at some time.
Because I was just going to tell you, when you said that the sensory room is so calm, with the lighting and everything that they put in it, I want to go sit in there myself. Calm me down.
Right.
Stressful week.
Right. We need that, and especially when we consider the noise levels in our schools, especially, it's just too high in some cases for learning. And that's why I'm really glad that the U.S. Congress a couple of years ago passed the law that regulates noise levels in public schools in America.
Okay.
And I think right now they're just working on the standards so they can implement that. But I think that is really good because I know there are some schools that are just too loud. And if we have diverse learners in that situation, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to learn.
They can't focus if the noise around
because
them.
Because of the noise around them. Yes. So this sensory overload thing is really something kind of new. But I see it is taking off in many areas. It is really taking off in the speech and language clinic because oral language and social language, social communication is one of the defining sort of conditions of autism. And so we have to be very careful in how we control those sensory levels in our workplaces.
Right, I was just going to ask you about, so when the kids come in here with the sensory issues, how do you treat that child?
Well,
children?
Like I said, that those words, individual educational plan, that's powerful, because it says that we must respect and we must consider the whole person, not a group of people, not a whole class of autism, but an individual as a whole person. And so when a child comes into my clinic, and I suspect that there is some sensory issues, well, I don't even suspect. I just immediately start paying attention to how they are responding to light, how they are responding to sound, how they are responding to touch, how they are responding to smell. You know, we often tell our speech language pathology students, especially the females, watch what perfume and cologne to the men, what colognes you be putting on, because everybody doesn't like those smells.
Hey, Nikki, thanks for joining.
And so you really want to be careful, because you want to make that environment so comfortable that the person can relax and begin to take in what you have to offer in terms of learning. And you don't want sounds and smells and touch and taste to be an obstacle.
That's true, and they should have that at the workplace.
Yeah. Put it at the workplace.
No, because everybody don't like perfume.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you working next to somebody and it's just like, okay, I don't like perfume.
Yeah.
So,
you know, in our profession, you know, they're calling this cultural competence, that we have to be aware and respectful and accepting of a person's culture.
Yeah.
Well, culture means a lot more than just race or gender. Culture means sight, it means sound, and what people kind of like, what they like to see, how they like, how much light, you know, they have. You know, my kids come in to my home and they tell me all the time, Dad, you got it too light in here. You got too much light. Well, I say, aging eyes go dim and you need more artificial light.
So you can see better.
You can see, so you can see, period. Yes. So that's what we want to make sure, that we are observant of those types of things, because, you know, really that is the number one skill of a teacher in any situation, is to be an observer of where the student is, you know, in their development and how they are functioning. And those observations is more than just, you know, reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, it's also being observant of sound levels, of, you know, of lighting levels, of smell levels. All of those things must be taken into consideration if you're going to try to control the environment so that it is maximum for learning.
And just like you said, that's why it's the importance of the IEP also.
The IEP, those are powerful words. Powerful words.
Because the IEP and your IEP, they'll say, okay, well, because this child has sensory issues, this child have to sit in the front of the class because it might not really hear in the back, but we don't want too much the classroom noises to
put
bother
it behind them.
So they put them in the front of the class. And also, like you said, the sight, so they could see the board clearly. So, yeah, so that was real important about the IEP, to make sure that the child has a good IEP, and you make sure those things be put in the IEP when they have sensory issues, so they can be put in the front of the class, so they can make sure that they see the board clearly and hear the teacher clearly, and not be clouded with all the things that's going on around the classroom. So,
you know, I'd like to just jump ahead maybe to even next week, but the Illinois State Board of Education has said that there are 7 questions that must be answered in the IEP as it relates to students on the autism spectrum. Maybe we ought to go over those 7.
Yeah.
Next week.
We definitely will, because that's important. Okay, so next week we will go over the 7 questions that's important on the IEP.
That should be answered on every IEP that involves children on the autism spectrum disorder.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that next week. So, but before I leave, I want to thank everybody for joining. Tamara, Tia, thank you for sharing my live. Jaquan, Bernice, thank you for tuning in today. Rose, I see you. I want to thank you all for tuning in to Blue Table Talk, and we really appreciate you. But I need y'all to do something for me, because I'm trying to get my likes up, my subscribers up on YouTube. So I would like for you all, if you haven't already, to go to my YouTube page, which is Tawana Boo, and hit that like button for me, even if you don't watch the videos on there, because every video that we tape here at Blue Table Talk, I put it on my YouTube channel. But I want to go live on YouTube, but I need 200 subscribers. I know that I have 200 friends. I know that. So, but my numbers is down. So, if you get a chance, could you please go to my YouTube page, which is Tawana Boo, and hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell for the notifications. Like I said, even if you're not looking at the videos, at least I can get my likes up so I can go live on YouTube as well and get a bigger audience. That you all are not big enough for me. But I just want to spread the awareness, because this is autism awareness and speech therapy awareness. So I can spread the awareness even more. So could you all please help me out with that? And also don't forget about the Lion King this Saturday at the 87 Chatham Theater at 12 noon. And also this weekend is the 4th Sunday. It will be the 4th Sunday. So social Sundays. If you all want to check that out, go to the page Uniquely Autistic, and you will find out more information about that. This is a great event to get our kids out. Once again, it's Social Sundays, and you can go to the Facebook page Uniquely Autistic, and you can find out more information about that. But it's this Sunday from 2:30 to 4:30, because the time was changed. So it's this Sunday from 2:30 to 4:30 at the Metal Fitness, 5000 South Indiana Avenue. So you all go check that out and come on out this weekend. So those are some great events to go to this weekend. And again, go to my YouTube channel and get those likes up for me. And I want to thank my sidekick here, Mr. Brady, for being so supportive and always here for us to learn us and teach us all the good education that we need to know. So thank you all for watching. Tune in next week to Blue Table Talk. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.